Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome to our session. In this session, I'm going to be reflecting on a few things, not going into too much detail, but just going into a few things to do with career paths and career progression and these sort of things, inshallah ta'ala. Let me just get my notes ready. My notes have somehow, here we are. Okay, my notes have just eluded me slightly. Okay, so career pathways, publishing, and your 12-month plan. There's a lot here to unpack. So I might focus more on the first one, given priorities. And I might just briefly touch upon the second one, though I have the slides prepared for it. But because I assume most of you are not in academia, I will just quickly run through it just to give you a basic overview of how it might work in academia in terms of publishing. And the third part is maybe if you're looking into writing. So I do have a separate course where I try to help people think about writing and producing scholarly output in terms of written work. So let's begin, inshallah ta'ala, with our first one, which is to do with career opportunities. Now, I'm going to give you a list and just talk through them. The list is not exhaustive. What I mean by that is that there may be areas that I haven't covered, and there could be many opportunities that I haven't mentioned. But I'll mention the main ones that come to my mind that can help you, insha'Allah ta'ala. So, when we talk about career opportunities, of course, we're talking about both in terms of religious and non-religious, in terms of both public and private opportunities to avail of a career. Now, the first thing I always tell my students when they come up for graduation from a Darul Uloom or seminary, or they've graduated already, is wherever possible, wherever it's doable, try to have an independent source of income which is separate from any religious or dini activities that you do. So whether that's imama, whether that's teaching at a Darul Uloom, whether that's in a maktab, they will pay you, but you should have an alternative main source of income. There are lots of benefits in that. One of them is critically that you can maintain a degree of independence. You're not held to ransom, for example, by committee members perhaps, or trustees, or other people who might take advantage of your precarious financial situation. So you're almost doing deen khidmah as a form of khidmah. And of course, there's a spiritual benefit in that, which is that it can be very useful in building ikhlas, or in sincerity in what you're doing, because you're not there for the money, if you know what I mean. So let's look at the first one, or the first three rather. Among the opportunities that's available for us, the first one is obviously religious leadership and community roles. I've given a very secular title. Of course, in our tradition, leadership is not something that you run after, but rather it's something that you should actually shy away from, because it's a responsibility. What are the common opportunities for madrasa and seminary graduates when it comes to religious leadership and community roles? Of course, the most obvious one is being an imam, leading the prayers, or even a khatib. So not necessarily imam, but delivering hopefully inspiring sermons which will motivate your flock to draw closer to their creator. It could also involve spiritual guidance. Alhamdulillah, I've been involved with my colleague Riaz and Professor Sophie and Sheikh Bilal with the largest ever research on imams in Britain at Cardiff University. And we've been doing some work in that field, and we're hoping to publish a book and other things as a result of that research. So the first one under religious leadership is imam or khatib. The second one is that you should consider, if you have time, to do an ifta course to become a mufti. If you are, I would say this very carefully or advisedly, if you are interested genuinely in fiqh and you're genuinely interested in helping people out from an intellectual perspective. not just because it's a gap year and you can't find a job and now you want to train to become mufti so you can have a title before your name. That's the wrong intention. Intention is to please your creator. And I would say very, very advisedly again, that if you are training to become a mufti, it's a huge responsibility and burden on your shoulders. And you should be serious in that pursuit. You should be a mufti who's not only practicing what he has learned, but also has a depth in the fiqh of our religion. The third option is, of course, being a madrasa teacher. Very, very important khidmah, necessary in the West. The madrasa is the lifeline of our ummah in the West in particular. I can't speak for other parts of the world, but at least where I live, the madrasa is a fundamental institution for our children, because most of them will not become ulama, and their only formal learning of Islam will take place in a madrasa setting. So teaching Islamic sciences, of course, if you're very, very gifted, you can set up your own madrasa, or you can set up a online course or a platform where you teach in the evenings after work, perhaps, in sciences that you're interested in, like a specialism. So, for example, I know some ulama are really interested in fiqh or teaching Arabic to people. That's useful. The last one here, in terms of the first one, in terms of religious leadership and community roles, is chaplaincy. So that involves working in hospitals, prisons, university chaplaincy, even the military as a Muslim chaplain. Of course, this is really, really important khidmah. We need people in these fields. We need people to learn how to take care of people in vulnerable positions when it comes to prison or when it comes to health and medical ethics. People who understand how to take the fiqh, what you've been learning in madrasa, and bringing it to life in these pastoral settings. So that's another option that you have. If we then look at the next one, which is higher education research, this is an area that I'm in. I'm also in the first area, actually, because I serve as an imam and I serve as a khatib, but I also serve in higher education and research, as I think most of you are already aware. So there are academic opportunities out there for all of us. So becoming a scholar in Islamic studies. When we say Islamic studies in the West, in non-Muslim communities, it doesn't mean becoming an alim. It means really becoming an academic. So pursuing higher degrees. When we say higher degrees in Islamic studies, so whether that's a Bachelor of Arts, then an MA, Masters, then a PhD program in Islamic studies, theology or religious studies, it's very, very powerful. Provides you with critical thinking skills, writing skills. You learn about, I hope, other religious traditions, as some of you will be aware. I'm doing a course starting this Wednesday with another organization on Islam and modernity. And all of that I learned in an academic setting about Western Enlightenment thinkers. So I've learned that there. Theology you can do in. So Alhamdulillah, I've studied Christian theology to a certain extent. Jewish theology I've studied to a certain extent. I read their books, and that will make your experience as a Muslim scholar more enriched. You can also follow comparative religion, which is engaging in interfaith dialogue and academic research. So there are opportunities to do comparative religion. And some people, if they're not well trained in Islam, they shouldn't do comparative religion. But if you're really interested in what makes Islam unique when it comes to the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, this is very, very useful. And we actually need, I would say right now, given what's happening, ulama and alimas who read and understand other scriptures and are able to engage with them critically and fairly. Another area you can do in academic and research is history, anthropology, and sociology. So studying Muslim societies. For example, at where I am, one of the centers that I am involved in at Cardiff University, the center is called Center for the Study of Islam in the UK. So I actually do history or sociology of Muslims in Britain. That's one of my other specialisms that I do outside of the other things that I do. So this is an area that you can go into. You can study history, intellectual history, something that we're not really taught in madrasas. So to give an example, if you read about metaphysical or theological debates around wahdatul wujud perhaps, or to do with debates around pick up anything, debates around schools of law, the theory of the schools of law, why they came about, debates around 𝗪𝗻𝗻 perhaps, the world of images in our metaphysical tradition, in Kalam, if you want to kind of find out why there was a debate around um, the speech of God in the Quran, these sort of debates, then intellectual history is your place to go. Where do the ideas that we've received today in the 21st century, where did they come from? Whether that's in philosophy, whether that's in theology, whether that's in kalam, whether that's in logic, wherever you may want to go. So being well trained in Islamic intellectual history is very, very important today. Even when you're studying something like Hidayah or Quduri Sharif, for example, in the Darul Ulum, where did these books come from? What is their genesis? Where did these ideas come from? Another one that might be interesting for a lot of ulama and alimas is translation and editing. There are opportunities increasingly available to get involved in translating classical Arabic, Persian, or Urdu text into English or even other languages. Some people have a natural ability to translate across quite easily, others struggle more. And learning these languages, I mean, you'll know Arabic already. Most of you will be familiar with Urdu. Once you have those languages, Persian is quite, Farsi is quite easy to learn. It's not too much of an effort to learn thereafter. So that's the second one, academic and research careers. The third one, again, an area that I'm involved in, which is the education sector. Um, Curriculum development, very much needed today. There are organizations here in the UK, for example, Safar Academy, who are producing curriculum for our children. Very, very much needed for Muslim teachers and even schools. I've been involved with an organization which prepares literature for RE teachers in state schools, a non-Muslim organization, but they have me as an advisor. Very important role. So you can get involved in curriculum design, whether that's designing a syllabi for madrasa or Islamic schools, where you can think about integrating traditional and modern subjects. Of course, you can also become a school teacher or an educator, where you can teach Islamic studies, Arabic in primary or secondary schools. And even if those are not subjects that you might want to teach, maths, English, science, just by your very presence in school settings, it's very, very important. What I would say to you is try to work your way up. So try to get involved eventually through your teaching experience in curriculum design and conversations about the way we are educating our children, Muslim and non-Muslim in the West. Alongside that, and tied to what I've just mentioned right now, is educational leadership. We need people to learn how to run Islamic organizations. Unfortunately, we do have some bad examples of institutions not being run very well, getting into financial difficulties, becoming stagnant. So you need education leadership in terms of leaders, whether that's a school or madrasa, people who know how to run an organization and teach our children um, in the best way possible. So becoming a principal, administrator in a faith-based school. There are some very, very successful models, which I'm sure you are all aware of. So it's not just becoming a leader for the sake of leadership, but actually having the ability to deliver. Okay, so those are the first three. There are others I want to mention. There's four more here. Of course, as I've mentioned at the beginning, they're not exclusive. There may be more. Another way area is Sharia advisory under law and mediation. That includes working in areas like Islamic finance, maybe halal certification, things to do with inheritance law, uh, these sort of areas. And that might mean maybe that you need to do a degree first in law or some science like accounting or finance to really get to grips with how it works in the modern world today and to bring that into conversation with systems today. That's very, very important. You could also get involved in mediation and conflict resolution, especially when it comes to Muslim communities and interfaith contexts. Legal studies, so pursuing a law degree, LLB, JD, to work in civil law, and you might get into areas to do with religious rights, immigration, religious discrimination. Increasingly, we live in a world where discrimination is a problem, and people's rights, religious people are being persecuted, and so that might be a form of khidmah that you can get your teeth into. And because you've already been taught in madrasas, if you've studied fiqh very well, it's perfectly transferable to a secular setting. If you studied the Hidayah or the Quduri or these sort of texts very well, you'll be very well trained in legal thought. Whether you study Usul Shashi, Usul Saraq, these sort of texts, I tell my students that it's not too much for you to then grapple with law. And we also need Muslims in international law, but that's a separate conversation maybe for some other time. When it comes to counseling and mental health, we found in our research this is a huge issue in our communities now. So counseling, mental health, providing, I guess, faith-based counseling. So you need to be trained in psychology or counseling based on Islamic principles as opposed to secular or atheistic or agnostic principles. You can give this, and of course, as pastoral care in hospitals, universities, or community centers. So that's very, very important. We're hoping, just to come back to Abdullah here, we're hoping that the book has been sent to the publishers. We're hoping the book to come out next year, if Allah wills, and there'll be other things that will come out of it as well, inshallah ta'ala, if Allah wills. Make dua, inshallah ta'ala. To put my camera away, you don't need to see me, you can see the slides. So that's in terms of when it comes to counseling, very, very important field. And imams are constantly overwhelmed, and ulama are constantly overwhelmed when it comes to mental health. And so whenever I meet a Muslim mental health professional, I usually make sure I get their number and their contact details and ask them that I need their help. So that's very important. Another area where Muslims are, mashallah, thriving in, I guess, is NGOs, policy and advocacy. We need more people there, of course. So working in faith-based or even secular organizations, charities, such that you deal with issues to do with education, poverty, refugee support. This is very, very important. We need more people to work in these areas at a very professional level. Also, when I talk about charities, I'm also talking about policy advocacy. We need more Muslims to get into governmental organizations, engaging in drafting public policy, especially with things to do around religious freedom, education, social justice. Muslims are a little bit behind in these areas. Alhamdulillah, we have people in law and accounting and doctors and dentists, and we have all of these people, mashallah, doing amazing work, but we haven't given enough consideration to policy, which impacts every single one of us on a day-to-day basis. And it's sad that we don't have as many people or people engaging in those spaces. I mean, when people do, sometimes they get attacked unfairly because they seem to be a sellout, but that's not what's going on here. So we need people in these areas. The seventh one, and there are many, like I said, but I'll end with this one on this topic, is media, engaging with the media, not for everybody, but potential to have a huge impact, writing and public engagement. I always encourage ulama and alimas to write, whether it's on a private platform, whether it's some sort of website that they've devised, getting out there and writing, crafting articles, books, blogs, on ethics, society. I usually write in an academic sphere, but increasingly I've begun to write for a public audience. So, and the simplest way, I think, to do that might be to use, websites that allow you to do that. So just to give you one example, I'm on what's called Substack, and every now and then I'll produce something that might get people interested. So here's my Substack. So you can, that's an article that I wrote this morning, just getting out there and writing things in a style that's getting people to think about our religion. I haven't finished this seventh one off, so let me just finish it off before I come back to a question that I've spotted. So becoming an author, writing books, becoming a public intellectual, someone who really writes about current affairs in a really creative way. Media, broadcasting, you can contribute to podcasts, radio, TV programs, trying to find opportunities to write, present, speak about affairs that concern everyone. And you can also lead community organizations, things to do with interfaith dialogue, civic engagement, so grassroots civic engagement, yani to work with local councillors, local bodies to get involved locally in the community. So in our family, my wife, for example, she's part of the parish council who take care of the local area. She's part of that group. She takes care of everything from, broken lights, street lights, to hedges that need trimming down, to getting funding to get a bench put out. All of these things are very, very important. Muslims should be involved in these organizations. We should be involved at a local level. I'm going to move on, but I've spotted a question, so I'm going to address that question before I move on, if I may. So this is from Muhammad Sajid Khan. Can you expand on legal studies and fiqh? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. All I'm saying is that if you have, I think what I was saying was if you have a good understanding of fiqh and you're able to reason well and you've been taught really well, then you should be able to find opportunities where you can get into legal studies in academia or at university, becoming a lawyer, international lawyer, wherever, and being quite successful. I think these texts, the Quduri, the Hidayah, these texts that you're taught in madrasas, if you read them really well and you study them really carefully, you're prepared to be a really good legal scholar. If you're not, then there's something to be said about the education that you receive. I mean, I teach the Hidayah at Darul Uloom locally here, and I actually said this to my students yesterday. I don't know if someone's here from my class yesterday, but they'll mention this to you. I said this to them. I showed this to them. I said, look, this is pure legal reasoning, and Westerners will be hugely impressed by the complexity of our legal reasoning methods, right? It's not just regurgitating, it's deeply thinking about revelation. So I don't know if that answers your question. Please do come back if you want more clarity, if you want to seek clarity. Okay, so career pathways. I guess there's you can break it down into 5 steps. There can be more, and usually when people come to me for advice, I do more work than what's presented here. So the first one is so you can see them going across here from left to right, is self-assessment. So you want, I mean, it's a truism, I guess. It's axiomatic, I guess. You won't develop, you won't improve until you are open to being challenged, until you're open to being pushed. If you like comfort, you're not going to develop. But if you train yourself for discomfort and see that as a way of developing yourself, then you will develop very, very, very rapidly and very quickly. So the first thing is self-assessment. What do I mean by that? Well, maybe asking questions like, what are my strengths? Right? What am I really good at? Public speaking, perhaps, writing, perhaps, teaching, perhaps, whatever it may be. And then saying, what are my interests? So I'm interested in fiqh, education, theology, social justice. What are your interests? What really rocks your boat, as they say? And then a third question might be, what are your sort of values that you hold dear? So khidmah, you might be really into khidmah. You might be into showing leadership, exemplifying leadership, or you might be like me, a boring person who's interested in scholarship, academic pursuits. Ideally, you'd be involved, you'd have many values, but there'll be some that you are particularly focused on. So that's the first thing. And I guess, I mean, I call it self-assessment, but our spiritual masters would say that this is a form of knowing thyself. مَنْ عَرَفَ نَفْسَهُ عَرَفَ رَبَّهُ. That you need to know yourself and your sort of limitations before you can move forward. The second one is the bridging of the gap. So there's different ways you can do this. An example might be, I've been to Darul Uloom, I want to go to university, I don't have A levels, what do I need to do? Well, you can find out things that you might want to do, like access courses or foundation courses, which will allow you to get into university. So this is where I am right now, this is what interests me. I want to get to B. What do I need to do to get to B? What steps do I need to take to get to B? Very, very simple. It might even be language skills. Many ulama and alimas tell me that they struggle with writing academically. So on a separate course for Balagh, we've been doing some of that. Or other languages you want to learn that might help you. Are you still struggling with Arabic? Okay, so how do you improve on that? How do you get there? What do you need to do? Or it might be for any other skill. You might not have the research skills yet. So what courses can you do? Who can you spend time with? Which organizations can you align yourself with to develop your research skills? And you might also need to do something very, very useful, which a lot of ulama and alimas don't do, is you can always seek out accreditation. There's something called recognition of prior learning. They call it different names in different parts of the country, different parts of the world. But what you can do is, if you're smart, is you can actually get any learning that you've done, like alima, a mufti class, get some sort of recognition, which allows you to get some sort of equivalency, and then allows you to reach other programs that you might want to. Number 3 is further education. So what degree do you need? What degree do you want to do? Islamic studies, education, law, social work, finance, whatever it may be. And then once you've done that, maybe even want to go further, MA or a PhD in religious studies, or anything that's related to those fields. So they're quite useful courses to do. Of course, I always tell people that when you get to pass the BA and you want to do a PhD after an MA, it's worth speaking to people who have done PhDs. PhDs are quite rigorous, at least in the UK, and they are immensely rewarding, but immensely challenging for some people as well. So you need to really make sure that you're ready for it. But you will come out of a PhD fundamentally different from the person that walked into one. You might also want to do professional certifications. So whether that's to do with counseling, teaching, you might want to get PGCE. There are usually grants available. You might want to get into chaplaincy, usually through contacts. These are important opportunities. The fourth one here, experience and networking. I added this in because as much as you have qualifications, as much as you have degrees and certifications, you have to network. Scholars in the past were amazing at networking, getting your name out there. It sounds a bit like shameless. It sounds a little bit like you're selling yourself. But I think it's not really that. What I really mean by that is you have to get to know people. Sitting in your room and hoping that the word will come to you, that will not really work out. You have to sort of get out there and get your reputation out there, if you know what I mean, especially when it comes to the secular world. So, connecting with ulama who might have had similar experiences, madrasa graduates who are in academia, madrasa graduates who are in chaplaincy, perhaps, these things. And get to attend conferences. There's lots of conferences. I'm part of an organization in academia called 𝗪𝗿, which is an Islamic studies body, and attend the conferences, see how they publish work, see who's there, see what kind of writing is coming out, go to workshops, go to lectures, go to seminars. Some of them are open to the public. Find out what's going on. Get well connected outside of the bubble. Many of us as Muslims, we live in little bubbles in our towns or the cities, and it's quite safe. But if you really want to develop, you have to sort of leave your little bubble. There's another one here. I'll just mention it. I think I might have made a mistake. I may have a look. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So I've talked about mentorship. There's also another one about experience and networking. Um, yeah, mentorship and support. Okay. There's also gaining experience, which is in mosques. So I've kind of jumped this one, but I'll come to it, which is that being involved in masajid, in schools, non-governmental organizations, academic institutions is very, very important. And what you need to do is build a portfolio of work. So, get a wide array of skill sets, teaching, writing, public speaking. I mean, most ulama, because of the nature of their work, are good at public speaking and teaching, but also getting into writing, publishing, these sort of things. These things are very, very useful. Okay, so I've been asked to talk about this as well, which I won't go into too much because I think this might actually be overwhelming. So I do have a slide here, and somebody wants to. What I might do actually to save time, I might come back to it if we have time. If not, if somebody wants to know about this particular topic of how to publish research and present academic conferences, I'm happy to talk them through my own experience of how to do this. I do sit on a number of bodies where I read journal articles and decide whether they're good enough to be indeed published. Here's some practical advice. A 12-month academic and career roadmap. I think this is probably more aligned with what some of you might be more interested in. And of course, when I mentioned this, this is just how I map things. So one of the things that I always do is if I want to get somewhere, in my career, long term or short term, I usually map it out. So I usually sit down and open a document, usually an Excel document, and I plan things out. Like, okay, this is what I am now. This is what I need to do. What kind of things do I need to do in between? How long will they take? And I then plan it out. And I always leave some time for flexibility. So I build in downtime. And then I also put in rewards. So if I finish each stage, I'll reward myself. I don't know, maybe go for a walk, maybe go out somewhere with my wife, maybe go on a holiday or something. I don't know, something that will keep me going and keep me motivated. So here's a 12-month academic and career roadmap, and I'm happy to share these PowerPoint slides with anyone afterwards, inshallah ta'ala. So the first thing is, say you want to write something, say you want to publish something, say you want to achieve something. Say, let's just take a writing example. Uh, Number one is foundation and planning. Okay, so you have to really clarify your research interests and career goals, because what will happen is, if you're on all these WhatsApp groups that every alim is supposed to be on and other places, you'll just get overwhelmed with information. It'll become information overload. So you have to ask yourself, what interests me? Because if you do something that you're interested in, you'll follow it through. You'll enjoy it. You'll be really good at it. What are your career goals? And I've talked about before about in this stage identifying any sort of gaps in your academic profile. At the beginning, you'll have loads, but you just start working on them. And like I said to you, you have to be ready to do some hard work, hard labor at the beginning. I promise you, if you work hard and you immerse yourself in challenges, you'll develop very, very quickly. So finalize a research topic. So for example, you might have a fiqh topic that you're interested in, legal topic that you might be interested in, a philosophical topic, whatever it may be, right? And what you should do then is perhaps draft like a 300-word abstract. So like 300 words of what is it that you're trying to find out. And then what you do is you find 2 to 3 people, mentors, uh, who you can liaise with and communicate with and talk with about this idea and get their feedback. So, maybe you want to write about something to do with medical ethics. We'll find out 3 people, 4 people who are experts in that field, get to know them. That will be immensely useful. And maybe start writing about it on some sort of public profile on LinkedIn or something, or on these places. Once you've done that, you really need to dive into the next stage, which is research and writing. So begin writing. There's never a good time to start writing than the now. Start writing, start getting your ideas onto a Word document on a piece of paper, Think about your audience. And the way you do this is while you're writing, you find out what else has been written on that topic. So you might want to read books in Urdu, Arabic, Farsi on this topic. You might also want to read secondary literature. Secondary literature is basically things that have been written by academics. There are websites that you can do that on, university libraries, and you can access them and you can read what has been written on this topic. And then what you do is collect them all, read through them all, summarize what are the key points, what are strengths and weaknesses of all of them. There's always strengths, mashallah, if it's well written, and there'll be areas that you feel that the topic can be developed on, and then you can then build upon that. The thing is, for most of us Muslims today, is that the challenge is to not become slavely trapped in the past of past scholars. You respect them, you read their works, but what they would want you to do is for you to build on their work. So you engage with their work and you build on their work to give new ideas, new perspectives. Some of us only repeat the past. So, often, you don't want to see ulama regularly just posting content about people in the past without any relevance to today. You want to be someone who lives in the moment, lives in the present. That's very, very important. Once you've done that, you should start submitting your work, networking. So maybe if you want to publish an academic journal or conference, submit it, get involved with networks, send maybe your paper to a conference, submit your journal paper or what you've done, your research paper. Can be to 5,000 words, usually it's about 5,000 to 8,000 words, maybe 5,000 to 10,000 words. It's not a lot when you really start getting writing. And when you're a really good writer, you'll realize that 8,000 words is never going to be enough, or 10,000 words is never going to be enough. But the skill is like public speaking, is to say what you want to say in the time or the space that you've been given. I'm very particular personally about time management. So, when I do things for masajid or khutbahs, I stick to my time. For example, I do a daily tafsir at a local masjid here. It's available on YouTube. And I stick to my time, nothing over more than 11 to 12 minutes. Stop. Right? Even if you halfway through a point, I'll just quickly end the point and stop. It's about planning, because when you do that, you plan things really well. You organize thoughts really, really well. If you think you've got infinite amount of time, you just keep on writing and talking. When you know that you've got a finite amount of time and resources, it forces you to plan. It forces you to really organize things. And then what you can do is a presentation feedback. So maybe present your work, send it to people that you know who are experts in that field. Always network with them and get their feedback. Very, very important. Feedback is something that I know some of us don't like, but one won't develop if one is not open to feedback. That's important. Also, you got to think about your career, because as wonderful as writing and research is, use as a platform to get experience and to develop your career. Maybe part-time teaching, volunteering at Islamic school, workshops, getting your name out there. Inshallah, if you're really good and you work hard, then opportunities will begin to present themselves. Then what you can do by the end of the year is you're consolidating, you reflect on your progress, you plan for the year ahead, you strengthen your academic and public profile, you get your name out there. Maybe publish a blog or some sort of op-ed piece based on your research, some sort of news article, or some sort of website where it's kind of getting your work out there, and start thinking about your next paper. Maybe apply for grants. There's always funding available, especially when you're in academia. You have to continuously apply for grants, and keep your CV always updated, your online profile always updated. Like I said, this is the way the dunya works, and as Muslims, we just need to smarten up. It goes against the grain of how our teachers nurture us, which is the tawazu and humility. But remember, tawazu and humility is something that's very personal, and you should have that. But when it comes to the presentation of your religion, it's a different posture you should have. It's more confident, more strident in your outlook. It's not, tawazu is something that you have when it comes in your inner disposition. When it comes to the world out there, you need to be brave and have some chivalry and bravery in the way you do things. I'll just mention one or two things. You should also broaden your horizons. So people talk about traveling and reading books, all very, very useful. There's nothing stopping you from being successful. You're limited by the limits you set on your horizon. Really, I think there's immense work as ulama, as tulabul ilm, as alimas that we can do. And we just need to focus on what we enjoy, what we're good at, and think about the long term. We are meant to be exemplars for our community. It affects everything, the way you dress, the way you speak, the way you articulate your words, the way you carry yourself. We should be setting the standards for our community, and we should be open-minded. We should have 𝗬𝗍𝗪, shouldn't be afraid of anything. We should have a positive posture, a confident posture. We should represent our deen, our religion, wherever we can in a confident way. And we should be able to realize that we do need to develop, not become arrogant and big-headed, but actually become humble and become critical at the same time, and be able to think for ourselves and teach our communities how is it to practice our faith in the world today. Ultimately, we're all doing khidmah, but don't do khidmah in a way that comes to the detriment of your personal success. If you have family, you owe it to them to take care of them, to feed them, to clothe them as well. So you have responsibilities. And that's very, very important. A lot of imams, mashallah, and ulama, mashallah, give immense qurbani, sacrifice, alimas, give immense sacrifice to the community, sometimes to their own better judgment and to their health and well-being. So a good balance is very, very useful. When you're quite young, you're 21, 25, you've just come out of madrasa fresh, you have a whole 15, 20 years that you can really develop yourself. And so by the time you're 40 or 35 even, you've settled down. Allah bless you all, inshallah ta'ala. I'm happy to help if anyone else ever needs any advice, inshallah ta'ala. I'll stop there. Subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanak Allahumma bihamdika, nashhadu la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Okay, so questions. I have been to jury duty. The Western law is pretty simple. There you go, Anas has mentioned. Muhammad Sajid Khan has come back to me. Jazakallah, it was interesting because I was thinking about how to link the two, especially with rich content Hanafi fiqh. However, I'm struggling to identify from academic perspective how to link them two from khidmah perspective. So getting a career and learning and helping people, you might become a very good lawyer, which helps people who are underprivileged in society through a legal training. How to prepare ourselves for MA in international from local Arabic madrasas, how to even network. So, getting as much education as you can, getting support, scholarship, making sure that you're applying for scholarship, whether it's in America, in Britain, Europe, wherever, to study further. It's not easy, especially in Britain. Academia is quite tough at the moment, unless you have a scholarship or funding. So it's quite tough. So you should. This is something that's important for ulama. You should have different skill sets. So if one career or something's not going well, you can always fall back on something else. Yeah. Abdullah, I've studied part-time Alimiyyah program, but I feel like I don't know anything. I'm not sure what to do and how and when to improve. Yeah, so Abdullah, what I would say is do what I said before. Sit down, find out what your strengths are, find out what areas you need to build on. You're doing an BA course at Edge Hill University, brilliant. So think about how you can use your training in the BA to translate perhaps or write for Muslims or non-Muslims using that skill. Muhammad Sajid Khan, yes, the slides will be uploaded, inshallah. I'll share them after this lesson, inshallah ta'ala. Anas Shafi, is there any way to network? Yeah, I mean, I don't use social media as my primary way of teaching. I just use it to get my name out there, my work out there. Most of my work is through Al-Balagh, the Darul Uloom that I teach at, the university that I work at, my own academy called 𝗪𝗪𝗪 Academy, where I teach at the moment a course which is available to everyone if Al-Balagh will allow me to promote it. I have a course which is halfway through, but you can watch the recordings on epistemology and logic. And you can sign up to that course. You just go to 𝗪𝗪 Academy and you'll find it there. We're halfway through. So I've been teaching a lot of sciences. I'm teaching for another organization on, like I mentioned, on Islam and modernity. So trying to help out people where I can, inshallah ta'ala. My email address is there. Yeah, so Muhammad Kareem, every country varies. Sometimes you can get into a master's program without a BA. Sometimes you get onto part of a BA. It depends, and every university is different. So in the UK, for example, I have known madrasa graduates who've been able to get into a BA program. Some have been able to get onto an MA program. Nobody gets onto a PhD, and I wouldn't advise them to. But you have to be, I would say to you, like, always seek out opportunities. If you're determined to get somewhere, you'll find a way. Like, you'll find a way to get there. You just have to be determined. But don't do it for the money. Like, your primary purpose should be to develop yourself, right? Yes, of course, you need to have a good job and you should be earning good money. I understand that. I completely understand that. Somebody's asked a question. I want to make easy to understand Arabic grammar books in Urdu. Yeah, so it's worth, if you want to do that, that's brilliant. There are ulama here in the UK who have written books in English now to learn Arabic. There are a number of my friends, ulama, who are really passionate. Mawlana Muawiyah, who's one of the teachers at Blackburn Darul Uloom here. And there's a Mawlana in Leicester who's written books, who has a YouTube series as well. So maybe look at how they do it, who use ways to help Muslims understand Arabic. Very, very important. I'm not too familiar in the Urdu community, Urdu speaking community, but I do remember when I was in Darul, we had to learn Arabic through Urdu. And some of my friends did struggle because we're all Brits. Urdu is not our primary language anymore, really. We speak English mostly, and with our parents, we might speak some of the home language, but that's it. Where can we get our qualification recognized again? You would have to go to, like, organizations. So in the UK, you have bodies. It's worth always reaching out to the college. But in the UK, you do have organizations that can help you. I mean, I've never used them, but I do know that they can help with getting accreditation. For example, which one did I mention? I can't remember the name right now. I've lost the name. It'll come back to me, inshallah. Hopefully. Yeah, like they call it, a recognition or accreditation of prior learning, APL, RPL. You get these sort of programs that will help you. Okay. Okay. Iram, assalamu alaikum. Some of frameworks in secretary like real. Yeah, some of these frameworks they use in academia, or some of them are deeply problematic, deeply problematic. And so this is why, if you're not well read, you don't have a good grounding. Even if you went to Alim class and you don't have the ability to grasp these things, you shouldn't be studying these things, or you should put it off and just learn basics, genuinely. Because I've seen ulama, I've dealt with ulama who become murtad simply because they've become overwhelmed by Western frameworks, and they just don't understand it. I've helped a few, alhamdulillah. So if you're not well rooted or you're not well grounded, it's worth getting advice from professionals who can help you and teach you. So I've answered your question. Okay, answered. Okay, that's answered. Any questions, of course, you can reach out to me. More than happy to help where I can. Why did God choose me? Oh, that's my article. Okay, so I think I've answered everything. Alhamdulillah. Barakallah feekum to all of you for coming. I know it's your Sunday afternoon for some of you here in the UK, in the Western world. Allah bless you, keep you safe, inshallah. Please do keep in touch. I'd love to help you and hear from you, inshallah ta'ala, and join you on your journeys, inshallah, as you prosper. We'll stop there. Subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallahumma bihamdika, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu alayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.